Letter 2, Karachi, July 12, 1932. Dear American fellow students, in my last letter, I gave you an account of my first meeting with the Master. Believing that a further account may be of interest to you, I am going to give you in some detail the story of the last month with the Master. It must be understood in the beginning that I acknowledge my utter inability to do justice to the subject. But I will do the best I can, and I hope in the future to be able to eliminate myself from these accounts. But just now, I regret that I am unable to do that because of the fact that I am writing about my own experiences and impressions. These letters are therefore somewhat in the nature of a personal testimony, of which personal experience must form the basis. The man who brought the message to America. It is the custom of the Master to give daily discourses on some phase of his teaching in public meetings which are called satsang. These satsang gatherings are largely attended every day, and at the end of the month many thousands attend. It is then a sort of camp meeting. There has been manifest the deepest interest and most absorbed attention in all of these meetings which this American has attended. But the weather was getting very hot, some days up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and the Master, with a few others, was getting ready to leave for the coast. One hot evening, we sat on the roof terrace of a building and conversed for 2 hours with Radha Soami Satsang Beas, the man who brought the Santmat message to America and gave the instructions to Dr. and Mrs. Brock more than 20 years ago. He is now grey, with a long beard and a patriarchal appearance, but very active, and his face is full of light and love. He is so utterly unassuming, humble and kindly that it is a real benediction to meet him. I said to him, "And so you are the one who brought this great truth to America and initiated Dr. Brock?" Quickly he replied, "No, I did not initiate Dr. Brock. I only served as the beloved Master's helper. We can do nothing of ourselves. It is the Master alone who initiates all souls. He alone connects them with the sound current." A journey into higher regions. I shall never forget another evening which I spent on the roof with a small bunch of the Master's most beloved disciples, and we listened to a lady give a detailed account of her spiritual experiences, what she saw and heard during her journey through the first, second and third regions, and up to where she entered the region just beyond Daswandwar. The only trouble with the account was that the interpreters became so absorbed in the story themselves that they almost forgot to tell it to me. This was a rare privilege, as disciples are generally forbidden to relate their inner experiences to others. But on this occasion, we had special permission from the Master. And this is only one instance of how kind and gracious he is to everyone. It will be impossible for me now to give you even a resume of this story. Perhaps sometime I may do so. But it made the journey ahead of us all a more vital and fascinating undertaking, thrilling to the last word. One could see the light of truth and joy shining in her face as she told in simple language of the marvels she had seen. But she paused to say that there were no words in earth language to describe many of the things to be met with there. They were utterly unlike anything familiar to earth travellers. But she told her amazing story with such unhesitating assurance of reality that it carried conviction. I believe she has been about 15 years on the path and is much loved by all who know her. She appears to be about 45 years of age. Her name is Bibi Raki. On another occasion, a group of disciples sat on the roof, and we listened to stories of many kind deeds of the Master in helping students. It may be known to all of you that as a rule, the Master does not use his extraordinary powers to perform miracles, but they say that on special occasions, when the disciples' spiritual welfare can be promoted by such means, the Master does extend his grace. It must be well understood that this faith is not built upon miracles, nor is any student to look for them in his own experience. If they come, it is simply his good fortune and the boundless grace of the Master. Visit to the Kingdom of Kapurthala. I would like to give you an account of my visit to the native kingdom of Kapurthala, only a couple of hours' drive from Beas, and of the drive through the grounds and visit to the palace, a veritable museum of ancient and modern implements of war, many other historic relics, and the beautiful art exhibits. The Raja is a lover of art, and some rare specimens adorn his palace walls. But these things can be told by travellers who have nothing more important to write about. I must hasten on with my story of the Master and his work. I may just mention in passing that I was a guest in the home of a college professor by the name of Jagmohan Lal, who teaches in an excellent school of higher learning in the capital city of this little kingdom. For 2 days the most cordial brotherly love and kindness was extended to me in the home of this good man who is a devoted follower of our Master. It was through his kindness that the writer was admitted to the royal palace and grounds. The Master is thinking of America. One day the Master and a number of the leading disciples were sitting in my room conversing, while I was showing them my diplomas. When I showed the Master my diploma in theology, one of the men remarked that it was my certificate to be a padre. The Master smiled and said, "Now you will soon be a real padre." And when one of the men urged the Master to go to America, this writer said, "Yes, it would be a great day for America if you would consent to go there and take them the truth." The Master replied, "The work that I would do in America, you shall do for me, and that is why you have been brought here to prepare for it." Love, the supreme law. On the morning of the 20th, I met the Master at the bedside of a sick man. After a few minutes' conversation with the sick man, the Master turned to me and said in English, "Where there is love, there is no law." I said, "Yes, because love is the supreme law." And the Master said, "Yes, that is true." Hard to remain here in the body. One day the Master seemed a bit sad, and I asked him if he did not feel well. He said yes, he felt all right. And then he went on, talking about the higher regions, how the soul so much disliked to come back down here and put on dirty rags, when it was used to wearing the finest robes in the palaces of the Father's kingdom. He said, "It is hard to remain here in the body." On another occasion, the Master remarked that if one looks down upon this world from the higher regions, it all resembles a bunch of garbage cans and outhouses in comparison. The very atmosphere seems poisoned and so dark in comparison with the fair lands above. So it is difficult, even for the unselfish Master, to remain away from home and live in this low land of shadow and uncleanness. Only his great love for human souls, who so much need his help, detains him here. But there is one great compensation which he has even now. He may daily visit his splendid mansions above and converse with the glorified inhabitants of that region. The joy of that then sustains him through all of his arduous labour here. He knows it is only a matter of time until his work will be finished here and he will take up his permanent residence there. The Master's eldest son. I must tell you of the visit of the Master's eldest son. He recently came to visit his father at the Dera. He is a fine-looking, large man, now with hair and beard grey, looking to be about 50 years of age. When I was introduced to him, I made the remark that I would rather be the son of such a father as his than to be the Prince of Wales. He replied that he too was very proud of his father, and he added, "He is as God to me." I understand that this eldest son was initiated by the Guru of our Master. The Master's family are all initiates, I am told. On another day, when we all met with the Master for satsang in Lahore on our way to Karachi, this same son came to greet his father, and it was an inspiring sight to witness the devotion he manifested. There stood the Master with dignity tempered by a beautiful humility, and a tall, stately old man with long grey beard, the Master's son, prostrated himself on his knees, touching his forehead to his father's feet. I fancied such a sight was rare on this planet. 91 years a satsangi. I must mention an old satsangi who is a faithful attendant at all of the meetings. He is 109 years of age and was initiated by Swamiji himself, the founder of this science, some 90 years ago. He is a bit stooped and feeble now, but is able to attend all of the meetings. He walks to them all and sits as close to the Master as he can get. One day I asked him if he was happy, and he said, "Oh yes, of course." Day after day he sits, the joy bells ringing through his soul, waiting patiently for his release. He is very thin. Evidently, not much of his time does he put in consciously down here, when he can withdraw from the body and rest in those bright upper regions with which he is already quite familiar. It may be added here that he passed to his home above only a few weeks after this letter was first written, and his poor old thin body was reduced to ashes out on the banks of the Beas River. The journey to Karachi. At 4 a.m, June 23rd, we left Beas for Lahore, the capital city of Punjab, on our way to the sea coast. This part of the trip was made by motor car. We stopped over a few minutes in Amritsar, where in the dawning daylight several hundreds awaited the Master at the new hall. A wealthy man by the name of Shiv Shankar is building a magnificent new hall and quarters for the Master to hold satsang in Amritsar. The Master inspected the work on the new structure, and we then drove on, arriving in Lahore at 7 o'clock. We found a crowd of about 5,000 people awaiting the Master, and he gave an hour's talk. After a brief rest and breakfast, the master went on to a distant village, where about 4,000 people were gathered to greet him, while the rest of us remained in Lahore. At 9 o'clock the next morning, the master met us at the train en route for the coast, and we went on together. At about 11 o'clock that morning, our train pulled into a station amidst a great throng of people, many thousands. They had heard that the master was to be on that train. He went out to meet them. They had erected a little platform and spread rugs for him. The master never stands up and lectures to the people, American fashion. He always sits on the floor or on a little raised platform and, with legs crossed, talks to them in a conversational manner. His voice is full of melody, and it carries well to a large audience. At this particular station, the train was actually held up for about half an hour by the crowd, while they clamoured for the master's darshan, that is, just to see him and give him their Radha Soami and get his greetings. Can you imagine a fast mail train in America being detained by a mob of 5,000 people pressing to get a glimpse of a minister or priest of some church? Again, it must have been about 10 o'clock that night when the train stopped, and a great crowd came sweeping in from the platform, almost pulling the master out of his bed, men and women all in one grand rush to get near him. They crowded into the compartment, and then the master went out onto the platform and talked to them for a few minutes. This was the last demonstration on the way to Karachi, which we reached on the morning of the 25th. Karachi by the sea. Karachi is a beautiful little city lying along the borders of the Arabian Sea, about 50 miles north of the mouth of the Indus River. As we came near the city, a strange sight greeted us. An airport lay out to our left with two modern planes standing there, one of them with a motor going, just ready to take off. Over to our right was the highway, and on it mingled modern motor buses, ox carts, and a long string of camels forming a caravan, such as might have been seen on these shores long before the days of Alexander the Great, or even before the days of Abraham, or the Babylonian Empire. Ages of history meeting at a single point. Arriving in the city, we were met by friends and the ever-present motor car, always waiting for the master wherever he may go. This time it was a Buick and belonged to Devan Sahib, a government railway official who is a disciple of the master. We drove a few miles through the city and then out into the suburbs to an elevated region by the sea, where we found two bungalows all ready for us. Many friends who had preceded us were waiting to welcome the master. Here, soft breezes blowing from the sea practically all of the time, day and night. Like some places on the coast of California, this little city is rapidly building up as a summer resort. Many magnificent palaces are already built here, and others are under construction. The change is most welcome after the heat of the Punjab plains and the dust of the long journey. A bath and breakfast, and once more the world seems a fair place to live in. The master sits by the sea. And now, what shall I say? Am I still on earth, or am I in some weird borderland? And how shall I estimate the values or describe the situation? It is all so strange, so unlike anything in the homeland. It is beyond words. Here we sit by the ever-surging waters of the Arabian Sea, calmly watching its whitecaps break upon shores hoary with age and rich in history. We think of ancient religious teachers who have visited this land and probably stood upon this very spot, including Krishna and Buddha and even Jesus himself. for it is known that he visited here. We try to recall some of the doctrines of the ancient sages, prophets, and Mahatmas, and all the while we are conscious of the fact that the greatest of them all sits on a bench here by us at this moment, calmly reading a book. We have so often wished that we could have known some of those great souls who were the light bearers of the human race. And yet, right here by our side sits one whose radiance is not dimmed by comparison with any of them. For he has penetrated all the deep mysteries of life and of death. And he has conquered the last obstacle between man and the supreme heights. Here by us quietly rests one whose powers, I believe, far transcend those of the greatest prophets of old. And I sit here by the waters of the ancient sea, trying vainly to comprehend the situation. As I sat there at his feet, studying the situation, he looked up from his book and glanced across at the restless waves. Some children played near him, and a smile lighted his face as he watched them. This writer then asked the master the following question: "When you know so much more than all the books in the world, why do you read them?" He smiled and said, "I wish to familiarize the mind with the writings of the different saints, so as to use them in my discourses, to support the teachings of Santamat. There are many people who look to some old authority which they have learned to revere. We can often take advantage of that to convince them of an important truth. It is difficult now to fit myself into the picture here. I am an American trained to different ideas, trained in the materialistic West, that West which believes itself to lead the world in all modern achievements. As a product of that West, I sit here at the feet of the greatest of modern sages, whose wisdom embraces and transcends all ages and lands. I sit at the feet of one whose powers are not limited by time or space, whose word or will could transform a kingdom or a world, whose very glance has in it the power of death or of eternal life. I, whose commands even the waves of this ancient sea must obey, if he chose to command them. And yet he is in outer appearance only a gentle old man with a long white beard and a kindly smile for the children who play at his feet. The multitudes pass by him, some haughty and vain, not even noticing him, bent on errands of pleasure, pomp and ceremony. But occasionally comes a group of satsangis who bow adoringly at his feet. I listen as he greets them with that sweetest of all pronouncements, Radha Soami. And so the day passes. All the while I keep thinking, what a pity that the world does not know him. The crowds pass him by as if they were utterly blind, and so they lose the golden opportunity which might have meant so much to them if only their eyes had been opened. Glimpses of a marvellous truth. How I wish I could do justice to the subject. But I am as yet only a little child on this holy path. Day by day I am trying to grasp the deeper meaning of this sublime truth, but much of it still eludes me. It is much like an experience I had at Crater Lake the first time I ever saw it. I went up and sat down at the rim, and for 4 hours I sat there trying to let my soul grow big enough to appreciate the majesty and sublimity of it all. So I sit today at the feet of the Master, trying to penetrate the deep mystery, trying to open my consciousness to an adequate appreciation of its sublime depths. Aside from the Master himself, I try again and again to compare this system of truth with other teachings, and daily I am more and more amazed at its solemn grandeur. It is like the peaks of the Himalayas, only a few hundred miles north of us. It is monumental, gigantic, overwhelming. But no man can absorb it all at once. At first there will be doubts, and many things will astonish the student. Later, he will come to wonder why all the world has not seen its truth and hastened to make it their own. It is so obviously true. After floundering about in a vortex of religious and philosophical speculation for a half-century, I am prepared to welcome this teaching with more than ordinary gladness. When one gets even a feeble grasp of its fundamentals, he simply knows it is true. It is so clearly rational, and it meets all demands of both reason and intuition. It is a scientific fact, and it solves all of the problems of life, here and hereafter, and they are solved in such a beautiful and simple manner that one instinctively knows he has reached the final solution. And the centre and soul of it all is the gracious Master himself, now living among us. He goes on loving and teaching and helping us, leading us up over all the difficult places, up and up, until the last supreme height is reached, and we merge our souls into the stream that gave us being, bathed in infinite light. There is much more one could write, but not now. This letter is already too long. I will close it with a prayer which I believe you will all like. It was written by our first Master Swamiji, and was translated into beautiful English by Pingal Rungrao of Hyderabad, Deccan. O august Radha Soami, thou living self and loving Master, beneficent Father and Mother of all, be merciful, make us thine own, and save us from the snares of time. Passed I through Satyuga, Treta and Dwapar, unknowing of the heavenly melody proper. Now art thou merciful in this Gal Yuga hard, to chant in loud and lucid strains the word, O Swami, descending into this plane below. Helpest thou the living entities to span the worldly ocean across, to cast the Trinity off and reach the fourth abode, whence the living name unfolds, and the living mastership bathed in glory and effulgent light. Thy servant tenders this solemn petition. Grant us even the regionless region, the chief abode, the sphere of bliss, the refuge at thy feet, my Lord. With greetings of fraternal love, I am your fellow student at his feet, Julian P. Johnson.